Hey guys, thanks for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about the Super Bowl. No, we're not going to be talking about the game itself. We're going to be talking about some of the ads in the halftime show and some of the things surrounding the little bit of pushy, preachy, woke messages that were in there. Now, there was quite a bit to go over. It could have been a lot worse. Don't get me wrong. It could have been a lot worse. But there were some things, especially when it comes to women with objectification, and you have people on one side saying that that the halftime show really objectified women, and people saying it didn't, and that they're just hypocrites. And there's people arguing on both sides. We're going to look at, based on the ads they ran and how the halftime show was presented, if we are moving the right way as a culture with how we are presenting women and, portraying them on TV and media and all those sorts of things. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So let's take a look at the ads first and see what exactly was going on. Now, not all of the ads were trying to be extremely woke and all of that, but there were a couple in particular having to do with this subject that we're talking about that actually caught my attention on this. The first one we'll look at is the one by Olay, the one where the women go up into space on this spaceship. So let's go ahead and take a look at the commercial, and then we will talk about what they went over in it.
Is there enough space in space for women? Who wrote that? Are people really still asking that question?
Operation Make Space for Women is ready for liftoff.
Mission Control.
Taraji P. Henson here.
We have the opposite of a problem.
There is so much space up here.
Well, I could have told you that.
When we make space for women, we make space for everyone. One tweet equals
$1 to girls who code.
What does this button do?
eject.
That ad made some good points. It's good, to try to send girls to different camps and support them and help them, branch out into other areas and learn. But there's an underlying premise that there's not enough space for women in this field, or that people have told women there's not enough space for them in this field, and that there's some sort of inequality, oppressiveness keeping them out of this field. It's like this push and this theme that they're oppressed and not allowed to get into this, and when they have to fight hard to get into this sort of field. Now, that isn't really an issue. People can do what they want and can pursue any career field they want. There's nothing legally stopping them from doing that. And it's this crazy mindset where it's just like more of like a victim thing where, hey, I'm oppressed, I'm not allowed to get in this. You need to purposefully make space for me to get in that because I don't believe there's enough of my gender in that, my race in that, whatever it may be. But it's this idea, and you see it not just between genders, you see it between ethnicities, you see it between any differences in people. If some characteristic of you isn't represented in a company, there's this idea that there's not enough space for you, and that someone with your specific characteristics needs to be hired and put in that position. Now, that actually is true if you're talking about characteristics that have to do with the job, like your knowledge on the subject, your experience in that area, and things that are actually going to help that company that's hiring you. If you have skill sets in that area, that's what you should be hired based on, your skill sets. It shouldn't be meeting some sort of physical characteristic quota thing. I mean, you could take this down to the deepest level. I mean, what about people who are missing an eye or people who are missing a toe? Like, I don't see 9-toed people being represented enough at NASA, or people with red hair. There's not enough redheads working there. Like, you can continue to take it on with physical characteristics, and it's an endless road that's going to get you nowhere. You're not supposed to judge people based on the color of their skin or the body parts they have, right? So instead of making a push for filling certain spaces with certain demographics just because you feel there aren't enough, you can encourage people to pursue those areas, but we need to stay away from this idea of forcing companies or trying to force companies to put people into these positions just to have them there. not because they're qualified. So if we focus on having people, get the proper education and skills required and pursue these fields, and they excel in them and they're better than the other people in those fields, by all means, hire them. But with these ads, there's this underlying, like I said, underlying push to just fill positions, and there's this claim that these women are being oppressed and not allowed into these fields. Now, there is another ad, basically one more I want to look at here, and this is the one for Secret deodorant, and we'll go ahead and watch this and then get into what this one was all about.
Secret.
Okay, so once again, promoting this idea of inequality with women, and in this particular ad, in the realm of sports. And they came out saying, they were talking about the inequality of men and women in sports. There's an equal push for both men and women in sports. There are leagues for both. If there are any pay discrepancies, payment in sports is based on how much those teams are bringing in money-wise. If you look at the actual numbers, players are going to make more that bring in more money from more fans. So that's where that's going to line up. I mean, no player is going to be equal in that portion. It's just going to be based on how much revenue they can bring in. You can't force people that aren't bringing in money to pay out more money to players that aren't performing at the same and bringing in the same audience. So these ads portray this message that we treat women unequally and that we don't respect them and we don't have space for them, when that really isn't the case. But like I said, I want to get more into, they're portraying this message, right? So if it's all about respect and, treating them right, all of a sudden we have this halftime show, okay? It comes out and it's a heck of a halftime show. So there's been a lot of banter back and forth online about whether the performance objectified women or empowered them. And you have a lot of people saying both things. So on one side, you'll have a lot of people saying, this objectifies them. They're barely clothed. They're dancing extremely provocatively, very heavily sexualized, very focused on sex and sex-centered in this performance. I mean, you had people barely wearing any clothes, pole dancing, dry humping the air or on each other, and just gyrating all around, making it incredibly sexualized, and people got offended by that. But on the other side, you have people also claiming that no, that's not objectification, that is empowerment, and that if people can't control themselves and can't handle it, they're either racist or they're bigoted or something along those lines. And they'll even call them hypocrites because they don't complain about the cheerleaders on the regular Sundays and just complain about the Super Bowl. So people are arguing about it back and forth, and the big question is it empowering or is it objectifying? So let's go ahead and look at what some of the people are saying about the issue, just to get a sense from their words on, what this is. So we have an article right here from Hip Latina. It says, "Dear white people, the Super Bowl halftime show wasn't too sexy. You're just racist." And I'm getting a lot of these types of posts. on Twitter and different social media networks here that the production, if you thought it was too sexy, you just don't understand the culture and you're not cultured enough. You're not woke enough, to really appreciate it without sexualizing it in your mind. Okay, that's one way to look at it. And then you had people posting stuff like this. They would say, "Please stop telling me that men can't control themselves. I'm a man and I most certainly can. Perhaps more men need to get in touch with their own sexualities and not rely on attempting to control and dominate women to express sexual desire." Okay, good for you, Science Mike. You can control yourself, and you claim that other men cannot. Well, that's a nice, easy thing to say until you look in depth at how sexualized content in media and the way it can lead to pornography and all the things associated with pornography are incredibly harmful. And we're going to dive into that because your little comment about them not being able to control themselves and you can gets a little more complicated than just the way you presented it right there. We're going to look at it. So you can say all day that, you can control yourself and watch this kind of stuff and you're fine, and that other people can do the exact same as you and it's all good, and you can just watch it for, the dance and respect, and there's no issue if they're barely wearing any clothes and dancing with sexual motions and all that, and you're good, you're fine. Well, there are lots of different people all over the spectrum, and while what you're saying about the specific performance might be true, but not what it leads to. So in media today, in culture and TV shows, movies, online videos, a lot of content is incredibly heavily sexualized. And while in and of itself that may not harm you, a lot of people, when they're taking in this content on a daily basis, they get more addicted to it, is a good word, because it is an addiction. And what happens is this leads them to pornography. And a lot of people don't have an issue with pornography for some reason. They think it's okay. They don't really understand what it can lead to and what it does to the brain and the sort of society and culture it can create in young people, especially, whose minds are very susceptible to this. So a great resource for this is a website called the truthaboutporn.org. There are countless studies. They do very good research on the subject, and they basically go over all the ramifications to this over-sexualized content in our culture. So a lot of times in the sexualized content that is shown either in pornography or in sexual scenes in movies and TV, which are practically pornography now, the women, and sometimes even men, are objectified in that they're treated as objects. So we're going to take a look at a short clip from this website and this resource I was talking about here of when they did a study on the human brain when it's watching pornography and this sexualized content. And he'll explain here what section of the brain lights up and how the brain responds when watching this. Take a look.
My name is John Fobert. I'm a professor of higher education and student affairs at Oklahoma State University, and I also lead a national nonprofit organization called 1 in 4, which has worked since 1998 to end sexual violence on college campuses and in the military. How is pornography harming our society at large? From 2008 to 2011, exposure among kids under 13 to pornography went from 14% to 49%. Okay, just in those 3 years. Well, what's a big thing that happened? The ubiquity of the smartphone. There's no question that this generation has more access to pornography than anyone in human history ever. How do we describe to people why pornography and violence go together? Pornography is a recipe for rape. And I'm not saying that anytime someone uses pornography, they're going to commit rape. But what it essentially teaches people is that you're supposed to be violent when you're intimate with somebody. There was a study that came out of the University of Arkansas and NYU showing that 88% of scenes in porn movies include violence by one person towards another, usually a man towards a woman. But what I found most interesting about that research is that when someone hits another person in porn, 95% of the time they respond with either pleasure or they have no response at all. So it's teaching this generation that sex and violence are intertwined. The most interesting study I read most recently is one that did brain scans of men while they were watching pornography. They scanned their brains and they wanted to see what areas of the brain light up when men look at porn. It's the part of the brain that deals with objects, not people. The more we dehumanize someone, the more possible it is to commit violence against them. And that's what porn does.
So, yes, to counter all the people on the other side of the argument saying that this is empowering and not objectification, science says you're a little bit off. Actually, a lot off. In fact, it is exactly what the people are saying. It is objectification. It is viewing the person as an object. And that is a response in the brain. That's not just a, oh, you know what? I'm good. No, I can control myself. I'm good. Controlling yourself has nothing to do with how your brain responds and starts to view something after seeing it over and over and over. That's not just a matter of good self-control. You can control yourself not to act on certain things, yes. But exposing yourself to that more and more has an effect on a person. And while you may be okay seeing that once in the halftime show and you see it occasionally on TV, you're going to have a different response than someone who is engaging in this every single day, multiple hours a day, and getting addicted to it. And that's the thing. It is an addiction. It's not just like, hey, I'm not going to do that. Same thing with a drug. The more you use it, the more you're going to get hooked on it and addicted to it. And it's going to be harder to say no. Your body's physically going to react from not having it and want it. And another thing with this. So that's just to show that it is objectification. Now, you're fighting against that on one side and you're promoting it in other ways. So you're not very consistent in your, the way you're presenting things. But why would objectification be bad? Why is it not a good thing? What does it lead to? So it doesn't just stop at disrespect of women. It goes a lot farther than that. And there are so many ramifications that come along with diving into this and getting incredibly addicted to it. Let's just go over some of the things that getting addicted to this behavior can cause. Obviously, like I said, addiction, but it can lead to anxiety. It can lead to an assault type culture where people get in this mentality that they can, or that they need to assault people and sexually assault them. And I'll get into that in a second. It can give people a poor sense of body image. It can, damage and create commitment issues, and it can damage relationships and destroy marriages and relationships between couples. It can lead to depression and eating disorders. Like I said, infidelity, loneliness. It can create mental health issues, and just so many other areas with self-esteem, and create issues sexually in your sexual life and behaviors, and create aggression in areas like that. There's just so many negative aspects it can lead to. And alongside that, like I said, a lot of these people get upset, blame men for objectifying women, and women for objectifying men. And they're like, just control yourself. And yes, a person should be able to control themselves. But when you look at a person who gets addicted to something, like I said, like a drug, does it work to go out and tell that person, hey, just control yourself. Stop taking that. Stop taking that. It's going to make you eventually do crazy things and hurt people and, either mess your life up or someone else's life up if you get so addicted to this that you'll do anything to have it. So that doesn't make sense. You want to get the person off the drug and, take them through a program to help them get away from that substance and keep them away from it, because it can lead to more harmful things. It's the same concept with, the addiction to pornography and overly sexualized content. People are getting addicted to it, and the more they entrench themselves in it, and the more they take in it, and the more they just make that a regular part of their lives, the harder it is for them to say no to things. And especially when, let me see the stats here. So when you have 88% of porn scenes including violence, what is that association that's being made there? And on top of that, 95% of the time when violence is being used in these pornographic videos, people respond with a pleasurable response. So what is that making people think that are getting addicted to this? They are thinking that, hey, one, this is okay. This is supposed to be violent, and people like it when it is. You're creating this whole concept of that sexual violence is good and okay. And like I said, it can lead to very bad places, to where someone can, yes, at first be able to control themselves and tell themselves, no, I won't do this, no, I won't do this. But the more they fill their head with this and the more they see of this, the more it is going to weigh on them and act like and take the effect of a drug, to where at some point it's going to surpass their threshold of, hey, I can control myself. And they pass that limit and they are going to go do something and hurt someone, and someone's going to become a victim. So yeah, you can sit there all day long and say, nah, I can control myself. I'm not going to do that. He should be able to do it too. You got to take into consideration what you're feeding these people and what you're putting out there. So, and like I said, the science backs it up. Studies show that it starts with getting addicted to it, and then it just progresses. And there's a huge connection on top of that to sex trafficking. Most of the porn industry comes from that. So, and like I said, please take a look at the resources that I'm going to post in the link here, because there's a lot you probably don't know about it. So instead of getting defensive when people say you're objectifying women, instead of coming up with excuses and calling the people who say this racist or bigoted, maybe look at the kinds of content this leads to and the things people get addicted to and what this puts in people's heads. And you complain when people tell you to be modest, and, you can promote respecting women in so many better ways than having them pole dance on stage with half their clothes off. And it's really crazy and outrageous to think that that is a way to empower people. It's not a way to empower anyone, men or women. Like I said, over-sexualizing anything doesn't empower anybody. It just makes them an object in other people's minds. And as we said, that can lead down a very dangerous road. And the exact thing you complain about people doing and committing these acts against other people is stuff you're putting in their head to begin with. And people come out and say, oh no, you're blaming the victim for, dressing a certain way and putting that idea in someone else's head. No, it's still the person's fault who commits the act. But that does not mean you have the right or the reason. There's no need to, if you're really looking to help and fix the issue, you're not going to be doing stuff like that. You're not going to be behaving like that and putting that out for people to see. If you really want to fix the issue. Now, if you just want to complain and try to, create victims and make your side more sympathetic or get more attention or whatever it is it leads to, I see why you're doing what you're doing. But if you're really wanting to fix the problem, don't you dare say that that is not objectification and it is empowering, because it's not. Well, thank you guys for checking out today's video and sticking with me to the end here. Go ahead and feel free to check out one of my other videos here. And feel free to leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment. I'll get back to you. And just remember that this is a serious issue, and I really encourage you to go check out the links I left in the description here for more advice and more information on what exactly the over-sexualization of media and pornography can lead to, and how serious it is, and how it relates to sex trafficking and human trafficking. Thanks.